HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Why You Eat What You Eat, The Science Behind Our Relationship with Food, by Rachel Herz, Ph.D. Read by Joanna Perrin. Introduction. In September 2013, The Telegraph, a British newspaper, reported on a revolt fulminating over the newly introduced rounded shape of Cadbury's iconic Dairy Milk chocolate bar, which had previously more closely resembled a Hershey's bar. Hundreds of disgruntled customers complained that the rounder pieces were sickly and too sugary, compared to the original square pieces. According to one critic, the new bar was all wrong. But the food titan Kraft, which had bought Cadbury in 2010, insisted that the recipe had not changed. If Kraft hadn't changed the recipe, why were so many people protesting? Enter the budding field of neurogastronomy, the scientific endeavor to understand the interactions between our brain, food, and eating. Ever since I can remember, I have been sensorially infatuated with food, feeling up the bread, taking bites out of chocolates and putting them back in the box, sniffing cloves of garlic and unground coffee beans, bewitched by the sizzle of fajitas. As a sensory and cognitive neuroscientist who has been studying the psychology of smell since 1990, I am captivated by how our minds change our perception of the world around us, especially what we put into our mouths. Why You Eat What You Eat stems from this intersection and my quest to answer the questions. How and why do our senses, mind, and environment impact our experience of food and our motivation to eat? And how does food alter our physiology, mood, and behavior? In this book, you will meet various people whose experiences with eating inform the complex and multi-layered relationships with food that we all have, including an extremely picky eater, a man who lost his sense of smell, someone who never feels full unless he eats rice, and an accomplished political scientist who is forced to sabotage her diet in order to work as hard as she does. We will learn how scents change the way foods taste, how music and color alter our perception of wine, how visual illusions can determine both how much food we put on our plates and how fast we consume it, and why so many people order tomato juice on airplanes. In Why You Eat What You Eat, I will explain how taste and our emotions are intertwined, why eating sweets can make us kinder, how depression can make grapes taste more sour, and how bitterness can change our moral outlook. I'll also discuss how what we eat can change our behavior, like the surprising way making ethical food purchases, such as buying organic, can alter the way we deal with other people, as well as how our behavior can change what we eat, such as why bringing a reusable bag to the grocery store leads to more chips and cookies ending up in the cart. We will uncover the processes that cause us to be seduced by resplendent treats and discover how the number of people who are at the Super Bowl party changes the number of chicken wings we'll eat, and that whether our team wins or loses alters our eating behavior the next day. I'll tell you the secret to resisting going back for thirds and maybe even seconds at the all-you-can-eat buffet. You will also learn various useful techniques for managing cravings and improving your experience of food, such as why paying attention to what you eat makes it taste more delicious, how aromas can diminish food urges, the ideal type of plate to use if you are trying to curb your intake, and why the first bite of blueberry pie is always better than the last. I'll explain how marketing companies are using this science to take advantage of the link between our senses and our desires, and how publicizing the reality of how much we have to exercise to offset the calories in the food we eat can lead to wiser food and beverage purchases. We will explore how the time of day, our age, our hormone levels, the mood we are in, physical activity, our personality, our beliefs, and what drugs and alcohol we have consumed can influence our perception of food, what and how much we crave and eat, and even whether or not we'll gain weight from doing so. We will question some of the latest headlines on diet and human health, including, is salt bad for you? As well as whether what we eat can change our susceptibility to disease. This book addresses how each of us, from omnivorous hedonists to strict vegans, brings different talents and weaknesses to the table, and how culture and our 21st century obesogenic environment present challenges that humans have never before faced. Why You Eat What You Eat will take you on a voyage of sensory, scientific, and self-discovery that will immerse you in how psychology, neurology, and physiology shape and influence our personal relationships with food, as well as how food alters the relationships we have with ourselves, society, and one another. Equipped with this knowledge, you will have a better understanding of how and why our senses, mind, and environment are woven into our experience of eating. With a fuller comprehension of your own gastronomic motivations, you will enjoy a happier, healthier, and more satisfying relationship with food. So, let's start at the beginning. 1. The Fab Four. The very first life forms on this planet had what we might call a sense of taste, the ability to recognize chemicals in their environment, so as to know whether a little tidbit would be nutritious, and to stay away from other tidbits that might want to devour it. Taste and smell, the chemical senses, were the first senses to evolve. And taste is everywhere. Moths have taste receptors on their wings. Flies have taste receptors on their knees. Tarantulas taste with their feet. Octopuses taste with their whole body, even their eyelids. We humans have taste receptors all over us as well. We have taste receptors in our pancreas, liver, and, if you're a man, testicles. We have taste receptors in our lungs that, when we inhale something noxious, send a signal to the brain to make us cough, so as to expel what shouldn't be in there. We have taste receptors in our nose that help fight infections, and taste receptors in our gut that influence our perception of food. The taste receptors in our gut also tell the brain whether we should keep eating an ice cream sundae or a cheeseburger, and when to stop. And it is believed that disturbances in the signaling pathways of these taste receptors play a role in the development of a variety of diet-induced illnesses, from irritable bowel syndrome to diabetes. But only the taste receptors located inside the 5,000 to 10,000 taste buds on the tongue, and what may come as a surprise, taste buds that are located on the roof of the mouth and in the throat, are hooked up to the taste cortex in the brain to give us the perception of what we call taste. We can't tell how sour an apple is with our liver. There are many mysteries and misconceptions about taste. For one, not all animals experience the same taste sensations as we do. Cats, from Fluffy the house cat to Cecil the lion, can't taste sweet. Whales and dolphins only taste salt. Moreover, the notion that we perceive salty, sour, sweet, and bitter on different parts of the tongue is wrong. Here is the story of how the false tongue map was born. In 1942, Edwin Boring, a psychology professor at Harvard University, read a confusing description of taste sensitivities that had been published by a German graduate student in 1901, and somewhere between the student's fuzzy account and Boring's translation, the facts were lost. Boring incorrectly inferred that specific areas of the tongue were responsible for detecting specific tastes. The back of the tongue for bitter, the tip for sweet, the sides of the tongue for sour and salty, and lo, the notorious tongue map emerged. Then, in 1974, Virginia Collins, a researcher at the University of Pittsburgh, re-examined the original German data and found that though there are tiny differences in taste sensitivity throughout the tongue, these differences are inconsequential, and all tastes can be detected anywhere on the tongue, except, as it turns out, along the center line, which is taste blind. If you dip your finger in salt water and place it on the center line, you won't taste anything, but move your finger to the right or left and you will. For the past 40 years, the truth about taste and the tongue has been plainly known, but the fiction of the tongue map still routinely makes its appearance in textbooks and online taste anatomy descriptions. Although the tongue map is wrong, the taste cortex in the brain does appear to be laid out in a map-like fashion, with different clusters of neurons specialized to respond to the different basic tastes in discrete regions. One region for sour, one for bitter, one for sweet, and one for salty. In fact, the most recent research suggests that we may not need a tongue at all in order to perceive tastes. Charles Zucker, a neuroscientist at Columbia University, whose laboratory has transformed our understanding of taste, found that electrically tickling the bitter neurons in the brains of mice caused their mouths to purse and their bodies to shudder as though they were tasting bitter. But when they were given a real bitter liquid and the sweet brain region was stimulated, they behaved as though they enjoyed the bitter taste. Your mouth detects the chemicals for salt, sour, sweet, and bitter, but it's your brain that tells you the difference between anchovies and applesauce, and signals that sugar is pleasurable and bitter is nasty. The tantalizing implication is that our problems with resisting sweet foods and beverages could be solved by switching on specific neurons when we want to turn chocolate cake into the devil's food. This is not mere science fiction. Pharmaceutical companies are working feverishly to develop drugs that will take the joy out of jelly and make kale taste like candy in an effort to motivate healthier eating habits. There is considerable controversy over what a taste is, and the benchmarks that constitute a basic taste are not fully agreed upon either. As of now, the most widely accepted criteria for a basic taste are: 1. The taste is elicited by a particular set of chemicals when dissolved in saliva. 2. The taste is distinctive and unique. 3. The perception of the taste is mirrored by a discrete underlying biochemical reaction. And 4. The taste produces a relatively innate response of love it or leave it as a signal for the presence of specific nutrients or poisons that we critically need to recognize. As of today, only salt, sour, sweet, and bitter meet all of these criteria. The 4 basic tastes of sweet, sour, salt, and bitter provide extraordinary and unique sensations and encourage us to eat more or spit out the substance that caused them. But these unique sensations do much more than guide our responses to potential food. They reveal our past experiences and hidden genetics, alter our food, and change our behavior, are involved in our perception of pain and our moral judgments, and affect how likely we are to get sick. In other words, the basic tastes are involved in multiple facets of our life. Sweet. A newborn will instinctively coo when sugar is placed on her tongue. Even infants born missing major portions of their brain display the reflexive smile of pleasure at a sweet taste. Sweet taste lights up the same reward pathways in the brain as addictive drugs and alcohol, and triggers the release of dopamine. In the pre-processed world, sweet taste came exclusively from carbohydrates, which always meant calories, a necessity for survival, as for most of human history, the next meal was a constant worry. The ability to taste sweet saved us from starvation, and the discovery of fire and cooking, which made carbohydrates such as tubers and starchy plants delicious and nutritious, is credited as leading to the evolution of the most complex creation on Earth, the human brain. In 2015, Karen Hardy from the Catalan Institute for Research and Advanced Studies in Barcelona, along with colleagues from the UK and Australia, analyzed archaeological, anthropological, genetic, physiological, and anatomical evidence and concluded that the consumption of carbohydrates, particularly in the form of starches, was critical for the accelerated expansion of the human brain over the last 1,000,000 years, and that our cavemen forebears loved tubers and grains. The true paleo diet is carb-friendly, after all. Moreover, although sugar is currently blamed as a key component in the nutritional axis of evil, during the 16th and 17th centuries, when it was a rare luxury in Europe, sugar mixtures were prescribed as medicinal treatments for conditions ranging from eye infections to diarrhea. These sugar cures may be medically dubious, but our bodies do need sugar. Indeed, it provides the power for our most essential organ. The fuel of the human brain is pure sweetness, that is, glucose, and 20 to 25% of all the calories we consume, and 60% of our blood glucose goes toward keeping our brain powered up. Without sugar, we'd be like a malfunctioning robot. Today, we can engineer the taste of sweetness from several non-caloric compounds, including sucralose, aspartame, and acesulfame K. The latest contender is allulose, which tastes and behaves almost like sugar, and, unlike other fake sugars, can be used in manufacturing sweet products, including ice cream. Watch for it coming to your grocery store soon. Sweet taste can also synergize with addictive drugs to intensify our dependence on them. Many brands of liquid nicotine used for vaping, inhaling nicotine-laced water vapor through electronic cigarettes, add the artificial sweetener sucralose, Splenda, and many teenagers add it to their own vaping liquids. The latest research indicates that the pleasurable taste of sweet, combined with the rush from nicotine, makes e-cigarettes especially addictive. Sweet body. Some chemicals make sweet extraordinary. Miraculin, an extract of the berries from the aptly named miracle fruit, which is indigenous to West Africa, can turn sour tastes into sweet heaven. The berries themselves are only slightly sweet, but when miraculin is added to sour foods, it blocks sour taste receptors and activates sweet taste receptors, so sour cream suddenly tastes like frosting. And the sourer the food, the sweeter it becomes. Pure lemon juice tastes like lemonade. Red wine vinegar becomes port. Yet there is no need to find exotic berries. Eating artichokes can make other foods taste sweeter as well. Artichokes contain an acid called cynarin, which causes whatever meets your tongue next to taste a little sweeter than it otherwise would. In this case, your brain, more than your taste buds, is responsible for making the magic. Cynarin actually inhibits sweet-sensing taste buds, but when you take your next bite of food or sip of wine, the cynarin is washed away and your brain interprets this before and after contrast as a surge of sweetness. Wine connoisseurs lament that this makes pairing wine with artichoke dishes difficult, but at least mixing artichokes with bitter greens can make healthy salads go down better. While some chemicals boost sweetness, others take sweetness away. Have you ever noticed that after you brush your teeth, your morning OJ tastes bitter? This is because there are compounds in toothpaste that smother the sweet receptors on your tongue, so all you can taste from the orange are the bitter notes. Fortunately, this effect is temporary and can be eliminated by eating a little something that scrapes your tongue or washes out the toothpaste, like toast or coffee. Other chemicals knock out sweet taste receptors elsewhere in our body. Taste receptors for sweet are present in testicles and sperm. In a recent experiment by Bedrick Mosinger and his colleagues at the Monell Chemical Senses Center, a research institute in Philadelphia devoted to studying smell and taste, mice became sterile when their T1R3 receptor, the receptor responsible for detecting sweet as well as umami and calcium tastes, which we will get to in the next chapter, was blocked. Some herbicides and drugs called fibrates used to treat high cholesterol, for example modalim, can also block this sweet taste receptor, and it has been suggested that their ubiquity may be a contributing factor in rising rates of male infertility around the world. So if you're trying to become a father, check your medication list and stop using weed killers. Fortunately, since sperm are continuously replenished, fertility can be recovered within a few days if men stay away from these chemicals. That said, this may finally be the discovery that paves the way for the creation of an effective male birth control pill. Below the neck, sweet taste receptors also play a role in the digestive system. Here they help regulate sugar absorption from the intestines into the bloodstream and switch insulin on and off. This is why eating sweets has a direct impact on our metabolism. The taste receptors in our intestinal tract respond to the sweet we've swallowed by activating the release of insulin. When this balance goes awry, it leads to excess insulin and insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is the first step toward developing metabolic syndrome, a combination of conditions including type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure, all of which stem from an inadequate ability to store fat. When one's fat cells have reached their limit, excess fat is stored elsewhere, such as in the liver. With insulin resistance, the body is unable to absorb excess glucose. The body releases insulin in response to eating, as it should, but then doesn't do its job of helping to store glucose from the breakdown of carbohydrates, and glucose and insulin levels in the bloodstream remain chronically high. 1 in 3 Americans and 25% of adults worldwide are burdened with insulin-resistant related disorders, which doubles their risk of heart attack and stroke. Indeed, globally, more people die today from obesity-related illnesses than from starvation. Curiously, however, about 10 to 20% of obese people never develop metabolic syndrome. It seems that this is because their fat cells have the ability to continuously expand to accommodate excess calories. By contrast, a small minority of very thin people completely lack the ability to store fat, and despite their low body weight, perversely develop metabolic syndrome. What this means is that having excess fat per se isn't a health risk. It's how your body stores fat that is. It typically takes years of unhealthy eating and lack of exercise to develop insulin resistance, but it can also occur within as little as 2 days. In a recent extreme eating experiment, 6 healthy, non-obese men ate 6,000 calories a day, 2.5 times their normal intake, consisting of a typical fast food diet of chips, hamburgers, and pizza, and were not allowed to do any physical activity. All they did was lie in bed and watch TV. Every single one of them developed insulin resistance within 48 hours. After 1 week of this bed rest and burritos diet, the men had gained an average of nearly 8 pounds. Despite this drastic finding, some investigations into more prolonged Super-Size Me meal plans have found that though weight inevitably increases, metabolic factors can restabilize over time. That is, over the long term, unhealthy habits are not necessarily a metabolic death sentence. Our bodies are very resilient and constantly recalibrate to accommodate changes in our environment. Indeed, this is how drug tolerance develops. The painkiller addict initially experiences a high from oxycodone, but as the body adjusts to the new levels of circulating opiates, the pleasure disappears. Moreover, as with everything food-related, our individual metabolism, genetics, and especially what we eat, and our activity level contributes to the outcome. Sweet love. Health issues aside, many people would agree with Mae West that too much of a good thing is great. But not everyone likes sweet taste equally. Intriguingly, how much you like sweet is not related to how intensely sweet you think something tastes. You and your friend agree that the Pinot Grigio you're both drinking is unexpectedly sweet, but one of you likes it that way and the other does not. Why people differ in their penchants for sweetness is not entirely clear, but it has been found that extra liking for sweet taste and extra eating of sweet foods share a common genetic basis and appear to be inherited. It has also been found that the genetic factors that underlie how much we like the tastes of real sugar and artificial sweeteners are the same. In a recent large-scale study of twins living in Australia, identical twins were much more likely to have the same perception of sweetness for both natural sugar, such as fructose, and artificial sweeteners like aspartame, than non-identical twins and unrelated compatriots. This means that both natural and artificial sweeteners are processed through taste receptors in the same way, and that it is the taste of sweet that drives the response, not the chemicals that elicit the sensation. If we knew our genetic sweetness type, it might make it easier for us to select foods that best meet our preferences. Likewise, food manufacturers could vary the amount of sugars and sweeteners they add to products to suit our taste genetics. A sweeter cola for you, but a less sweet one for me. At least for some of us, this might lead to healthier consumption. Children love sweets, but some are much more sensitive to the taste of sugar than others. In a recent study spearheaded by biopsychologist Julie Manella and geneticist Danielle Reed of the Monell Chemical Senses Center, 216 boys and girls between the ages of 7 and 14 were tested for their sensitivity to sweet taste, and the most sweet-sensitive children were found to be 20 times more sensitive to the taste of sugar than kids who were the least sensitive to sweet. In adults, sensitivity to sweet taste is mainly determined by 2 sweet taste receptor genes. However, this study showed that among children, these sweet genes weren't involved. Rather, a primary bitter taste receptor gene was the determinant. The more sensitive they were to bitter, the more sensitive they were to sweet. In adults, the less sensitive you are to sweet, the more sugar you tend to consume, and this is also correlated with your weight. The surprise was that among children, the more sensitive to sugar they were, the more sugar they ate, and the more body fat they had. An earlier study by the same researchers also found that preferences for sweet and salty taste are elevated and related to each other during childhood. That is, the more a child likes the taste of sweet, the more they like salt. But do not fret if you are a parent and your child can't keep away from the candy bowl. Recent evidence has found that eating lots of sweet foods as a child does not predestine us to a lifetime of craving them, as was once believed. Among adults, there tends to be a dichotomy between sweet and savory-toothed folks. Adults who like a lot of salt are usually not also the sweet lovers. It is currently a scientific curiosity why adults and children are not alike in these taste domains. Time and more research may tell. Sweet pain. Have you ever wondered why placebos are called sugar pills? In addition to the fact that they were originally made by encapsulating sugar, it's because sweet taste doesn't just make us smile, it can blunt pain. Using sugar as a way to reduce distress has a long tradition in infant care and is endorsed today in a variety of pediatric practices, from inoculations to circumcisions. Newborn boys given a sweetened pacifier cry and grimace less during circumcision than those given a pacifier dipped in plain water. This is why during a Jewish bris, the infant is traditionally given a dab of sweet wine or sugar water on his tongue. Remarkably, it's the sensory experience of sweetness on the tongue that does the trick, not sugar per se. Non-caloric sweeteners like aspartame work just as well. And the more a child likes sweets, the better sweet taste works as an analgesic. Sweet taste also eases suffering well past the pacifier age. In one experiment, college students in their early 20s volunteered to submerge a hand up to the wrist in water that was between 32 and 35 degrees Fahrenheit for as long as they could stand it, or no more than 3 minutes, while they held a mouthful of either sweet, bitter, or plain water. The lucky undergraduates who got to taste sweet during the ordeal were able to keep their hand in the ice water for an average of 80 seconds, 18% longer than those holding mouthfuls of plain water. In a recent neuroimaging study, adults between the ages of 20 and 35 who held sugar in their mouths were also found to have greater tolerance for pain, less emotional agitation, and less activation in the network of neural structures involved in pain perception when a frozen ice pack was placed on their arm than participants who were given a tasteless substance. Sweet taste triggers the release of endorphins, our body's own opiates, and, in so doing, directly help us feel better. Sweet happiness. It isn't surprising that people with a proverbial sweet tooth have less control over their ability to resist sweets and tend to be somewhat heavier than people with less of a penchant for sugar. But extra liking for sweet taste is also coupled with extra pleasure from eating it. Sweet lovers get more happiness from sweet treats and experience stronger positive moods from eating sweets than those who aren't as drawn to sugary foods. How much of a sweet tooth you have also determines how much people like you and how nice you are. In an extensive research project conducted at North Dakota State University and Gettysburg College in Pennsylvania, it was found that eating sweets and being sweet were highly correlated. First, it was confirmed that we believe liking sweets and being sweet are connected. Strangers who were described as liking honey were rated as friendlier, more cooperative, and more compassionate than strangers who were described as liking grapefruit, lemons, pretzels, or hot peppers, that is, bitter, sour, salty, and spicy tastes. Two further experiments showed that people who reported higher preferences for sweet foods were indeed more cooperative, kinder, and exhibited more altruistic behaviors, such as volunteering to help in a local disaster relief effort or completing an effortful survey in order to assist a stranger. Another two studies demonstrated that after just a brief taste of a sweet food, such as chocolate, compared to a non-sweet food, such as a plain cracker, or no food at all, people felt that they became more agreeable, and, proving that it wasn't just talk, they also volunteered more of their time to help someone else. This means that a little sugar can give us more sugar. Tasting something sweet makes us happier and nicer, regardless of how much of a sweet tooth we have. Sweet taste brightens our mood. On the flip side, how sweet something tastes is affected by the mood we are in. A study conducted at the University of Minnesota investigated how stress or rest might be able to change taste.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?